Let's talk running backs. Joining me today, Michael Fabiano, SI's senior fantasy analyst, to give us his top 10. We're going to go by tier today. Let's start at tier 4 among your top 10 running backs, Fabs.
And we'll start off with Aaron Jones. I feel like people are just not talking about him enough, right? Because everyone's expecting an A.J. Dillon breakout. But guys, Aaron Jones is a really good pass catcher. And what do the Packers have right now at wide receiver? Well, no Devontae Adams. They're hoping for Christian Watson to break out, maybe Allen Lazard. But I think Jones is going to be more involved in the passing game and certainly a top 10 player at the position in PPR formats. Next up at number 9 is Leonard Fournette. Okay, I saw the reports. He's 260 pounds. He said he's 245, but he'll be fine. It gets really hot in training camp, right, in Tampa Bay. He will lose the weight. He is going to be the featured back for the Buccaneers. They gave him a lot of money in the offseason, so continue to ride him as a running back 1.
All right, moving on to tier 3. Who you got?
Some really good players in this tier, starting with DeAndre Swift, who is a pass-catching phenom in an offense that I think could sneak up on some people this year and be pretty fantasy-friendly. They could be putting up some points. The one concern with Swift is his durability, but if he stays healthy, he could be a top 10 running back in PPR formats. And then up next, Joe Mixon. Mixon's coming off a career year, a magical year, might I say. I don't think he's going to duplicate those yardage and touchdown totals from a year ago again, but it'll still be pretty good. And again, that offensive line there in Cincinnati has improved in the offseason. And then Dalvin Cook. Yeah, he lost a little bit of luster last year, didn't finish in the top 10, was banged up, had some bad performances, but he is still a relatively young running back in the prime of his career. And that Vikings offense, Jen, is going to score a lot of points with Kevin O'Connell at the helm.
Definitely an exciting coaching change in Minnesota. Moving on up to tier number 2.
And we'll start off with Najee Harris there at number 5 among running backs. He was unbelievably good as a rookie. He saw all the carries, all the touches for the Steelers. I think he's going to be close again. He will be one of the top true featured backs in the National Football League. The Steelers' offensive line should be a little bit better after some offseason moves as well. And I think they'll lean on Harris more because Ben Roethlisberger has gone, and now you've got Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett under center. So expect Najee Harris to see a lot of the workload. Next up at number 4 is Austin Ekeler, our guy. We love Austin Ekeler. He's the active players ambassador for fantasy football. And I think he's going to have a good year. But he's not going to score 20 touchdowns again. I think you could see a little bit of Isaiah Spiller in the mix there as well. But Ekeler's a guy who doesn't need a ton of touches to put up a ton of fantasy points. And at number 3, Derrick Henry, the big man who was on pace maybe for another 2,000-yard rushing season last year before he went down with a foot injury. He's back to 100%. He's going to get a boatload of carries in that Titans offense. And it doesn't matter if the defenses know it's coming. You can't stop the king. So he comes in at number 3 and just outside of my number 1 tier.
3 studs in that tier, but let's move on up to tier number 1.
Some people may disagree, but I've got Christian McCaffrey in tier 1. And I get it. He's played 10 games the last 2 years. He is a risk. And if you are a fantasy manager who doesn't like to take risk, you're going to pass on him. You'll take Henry, you'll take Ekeler, you'll take Harris instead. But that doesn't mean that McCaffrey can't have a massive season. This guy has averaged well over 20 fantasy points in each of the last 4 years. One season, he averaged over 30 points before he got hurt. Again, I understand the durability issues are a concern, but if you like to take risks, remember what they say, no risk it, no biscuit. Well, Christian McCaffrey is a top 2 running back. And of course, at number 1, it's Jonathan Taylor. He's the consensus number 1 running back in fantasy football. 20 touchdowns last year, over 1,800 rushing yards. He was an absolute beast. Matt Ryan now under center for the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe that keeps defenses from stacking the box against Taylor as often as it did last year. And I don't know that he's going to score 20 touchdowns again. Maybe 1,800 yards is a little bit too high of an expectation. But 1,500 yards on the ground, 12 to 14 touchdowns, a guy who can catch 40 passes out of the backfield. Jonathan Taylor is also young. He is the number 1 option at running back and the consensus number 1 overall pick in the majority of fantasy drafts.
I have to say, I'm one of those people that's willing to take the risk on Christian McCaffrey, so I love it that he made it into your top tier. For all of Michael Fabiano's rankings, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, yes, even defenses and kickers, you can find them at si.com. And you can also find our entire fantasy football kit where we have sleepers, busts, breakouts, all kinds of things, comeback players. We've got it all at SI.com. But before you go, be sure to click that subscribe button because we will be bringing you outstanding fantasy football content as the season goes on.